The two top universities crafted their own rigorous tests. I was invited to go for an interview. I told my mother that she was off the case. This time I was dressing myself. Remembering the look of the other female candidates at Oxford, I borrowed a pleated skirt and a simple sweater from a friend and ironed my unruly hair so it fell in the shining sheets that seemed to be in vogue. Despite an acute attack of nerves, I did well enough in the interview. 3 weeks later, I learned that I had won a place. I was over the moon. I knew that a Cambridge education would transform my life prospects. Looking back, I realized that I didn't need to do brilliantly in those interviews. I merely needed not to stick out like a sore thumb. The fact is, in the 1970s, Oxford and Cambridge universities, under pressure from the British government, were trying hard to diversify and had committed to increasing the number of female and working-class individuals in the student body. Unbeknownst to me, I was a prime candidate, and those admissions committees were leaning over backward to give me a place. But the fox collar and the Welsh accent were just too much for class-conscious Oxbridge dons. I just stuck in their craw. Losing the fox was a winning idea. Given the travails of Oxbridge entrance, you would have thought I had learned a thing or two about the power of appearance. Perhaps I did, but it was hard to hang on to. Time and time again, I made costly mistakes. Take my hippie professor phase. My first job was in academia, and when I joined the Barnard College faculty as assistant professor of economics, I assumed that since I was working on a college campus and not on Wall Street, it was okay to be young and fun. So I wore my hair waist-long, and I specialized in flowing ethnic skirts. My favorite was hand-stitched and had a rather loud patchwork quilt pattern. I failed to understand that looking as though I was on my way to Woodstock got in the way of establishing authority on the job. Given my age, I was 27 when I started this job. It was a stretch to convince anyone I was a professor and not just another student. The last thing I needed was to compound the challenges I faced being the youngest faculty member and one of the few females in the economics department. I now understand that my early struggles to command attention and respect in lecture halls and faculty meetings did not center on content or delivery. I was a clear, crisp speaker and knew my material cold, but rather centered on the way I presented myself. The good news is that I eventually fixed the way I looked, evolving a signature style that combined elegance and professionalism with a safe amount of idiosyncratic flair. More on this in Chapter 4. But I wasn't out of the woods on the EP front. 20 years later, I hit another and much more serious image problem. It turns out that EP is a fragile thing. It needs to be nurtured, invested in, and curated. I failed to do this and fell flat on my face, necessitating an EP makeover. Here is what happened. In 2002, Tina Brown, who at that point headed up Talk Miramax Books, published my fourth book, Creating a Life. It launched on April 7th, 2002. The weekend before, Time magazine ran a cover story on the book, and the CBS News show 60 Minutes aired a feature. These stories triggered a maelstrom of media attention. The New York Times and Business Week did feature pieces on the book. So did People and Parade magazines. I appeared on the Today Show, as well as on Oprah and The View. The coup de grace? In late April, I was lampooned on Saturday Night Live, confirming the fact that my book had briefly entered the zeitgeist. Alas, the good news did not last. On May the 20th, I picked up the New York Times and glimpsed on the front page a noisy headline blaring, "The talk of the book world still can't sell." Halfway through the first sentence, my blood ran cold. The subject of the article was my book. In gleeful tones, the reporter, Warren